Hey guys, welcome to our first virtual meeting for the block party, block of the month. Today we're going to be talking about the finishing part 1 kit. The finishing part 1 kit, you are going to be making all of the setting blocks. So the setting blocks look like this, and they are made with a new Deb Tucker ruler called the Wedge Star Ruler. I have used this for my last 2 Deb Tucker clubs. It's been out about a year, so you may have it. You want to check that out. But it's called the Wedge Star Ruler, and there are links to it in the email if you need to purchase it still. Or you can call and we can get you set up that way. But it is going to be using the Wedge Star Ruler. The setting blocks in the lap quilt, there are 16 of them. So here's a picture of the lap quilt that you've seen before. You can see there's 1, 2, 3, 4 across, 1, 2, 3, 4 down. So there's 16 in the lap. In the queen, there are 25 of them, so you've got a few more to make if you're doing the queen. This is obviously the blue and cream version. Those of you that are doing the red-green version, here's your setting blocks. You can see they have a dark red, a lighter red, and a cream background. So to start off with, you've got a handout that hopefully you can print, or else we can include it in your kit. It looks something like this. Mine's a little marked up, but it should look very familiar. It looks like all the other handouts you've gotten along the way. We start off with, there's a little bit of an explanation about what we're making, and then you've got your cutting just like always, and hopefully you've printed this and can be looking at it as we go. But to start off with, you are going to cut just some strips from your light. From your light, you're cutting 2 different size strips, and they're just by width of fabric. From your dark, you're cutting just 1 size of strips, and then from your medium, you're just cutting some triangles. This block looks complicated, but there's really not that many parts to it. We've got in the block, let me bring the block up here so you can see it. Here's a close-up of the block. You can see you've got a diamond shape here. These are some small wedges, and then this is a large wedge. And then over here, you've just got half square triangles. So it's really not a very complicated block. It's not nearly as complicated as it looks. We're going to put diamonds and small wedges together to make this unit, which is called the diamond wedge. But before we can do that at all, we're going to cut some more shapes out of the strips that we've cut. So we're going to stop there and go to the cutting mat, and I'm going to show you how you're going to cut your diamonds, your small wedges, and your large wedges from the strips that you've already got. So the first thing that your directions tell you to do is to take your 2 3/4 inch dark strips and cut diamond wedges out of them. So I'm going to show you how to do that. But first I wanted to show you the directions that come with the Wedge Star Ruler. They look like this. There is a lot of information in there, lots of pictures and diagrams. There's also a whole cutting chart that shows you what sizes you're going to cut if you want to make some blocks in different sizes. But we're right here where we're going to be doing the cutting for the diamonds. I'm going to show you that. And in my directions that I've given you along the way, each step, I tell you where to look in here to find more directions and diagrams. So the first thing we're going to do is cut these diamonds. We're going to use our Wedge Star Ruler. For this, we're just using the Wedge Star Ruler to get the angle, because we need to start by cutting a 45-degree angle. So I'm going to start by laying my Wedge Star Ruler on there. I'm just lining it up along the top of the strip. And then I'm going to take a second ruler, any ruler with basic measurements on it, and I'm going to set it along that wedge. And then I'm going to move the wedge away and make my first cut. That just gets my angle started. So now I have a nice 45-degree angle. If you have a better way of cutting a 45-degree angle, if you want to use the lines on your ruler, that's fine too. But you want to start with a 45-degree angle. Now I'm just going to go ahead and cut diamonds. I'm going to make cuts using a regular ruler at 2 3/4 inches. The reason that I'm cutting them that size is because that is the size that my strip is. So I'm going to go ahead and measure 1, 2 3/4. I'm going to set that right there. I'm lining that up with the first cut I made. And now I'm going to do another cut to get my first set of diamonds. Now I've left my strip folded in half so I can cut 2 at a time. You don't have to do that. You can open the strip up. If you're comfortable, I like to actually layer a few of these at once so that I can get my cutting done a little quicker. So then I'll just keep going down the strip here. I'll make another cut, 2 3/4, line that up there, and cut again. Now, if you're cutting down the entire strip, you may want to stop along the way, get this ruler back out, and just check to make sure your angle hasn't gotten off. It can get off along the way, so you may want to stop and correct for that. All right, the next thing you're going to do then, after you've cut your diamonds, is you're going to cut your small wedges from your light strip. Now let me check and see what size this strip was. This light strip was 3 3/4 inches. So now we're cutting small wedges. Again, we're going to use our Wedge Star ruler. And this one, what you're doing is you're lining up, there's a little tiny mark at the tip of that ruler. You can see it there behind my finger. And I'm going to line that up with the top of my strip. At the bottom of the strip, I'm looking for 3 3/4 inches because that's what size my strip is. So there's my little mark at the top. 3 3/4 are lined up there at the bottom. And I'm going to cut up one side of the ruler and down the other. And that gives me my first pair of small wedges. Now you can do this with the strip folded in half, so you're cutting a couple at a time. It doesn't really matter. I like to cut a few at a time, so that's what I've done. Now I'm just going to take the ruler, I'm going to rotate it 180 degrees. I'm going to line it up with the cut I just made. And again, the tip will be right now, it's at the bottom, but 3 3/4 will line up again at the top. And now I'm going to go ahead and cut up the other side. Sorry if it's hard to see, but there's my second cut. It's kind of at a weird angle for me because the camera's in the way, but you get the idea. Now I'm going to come back this way, cut, and I'm just going to work my way down the strip cutting pairs of these. Okay, and your directions will tell you exactly how many pairs you need. So the next thing you're going to do then, you've cut your diamonds, you've cut your small wedges. Now you're going to take that larger cream strip, which was 6 inches, and you're going to cut large wedges. So there's my 6-inch strip. And the large wedges, this is the same thing that you did with the small wedge. You're going to line up that little tiny notch at the top, except this time at the bottom you're going to have the 6 mark because this is a 6-inch strip. So I'm going to set the 6 at the bottom, the notch at the top, and go ahead and do my large wedges like so. Okay, and in your directions here, it will tell you, sorry, mine are kind of marked up, but it does tell you diamonds, you'll need 64 or 100 for the lap. Small wedges, you need 128, 200 for the queen, excuse me. The first number is the lap, the second bigger number is the queen. So that's how you're going to cut those strips up. Okay, now that we've cut up all of our diamonds and wedges, we're going to go ahead and make diamond wedges we're going to use our diamonds that we've cut from our dark, our small wedges that we cut from our light, and we're going to put them together to make the diamond wedge, which looks like that, and you can see it in the block. There's 4 of them in each block. So that means that if you're making the lap for 16 blocks, you're going to need 64 of these units. If you're making the queen, you have 25 blocks to make, so you're going to need 100 of these units, and it says that in your directions. So to make these, you're going to start by laying out the unit with your diamond and your 2 wedges, and those are small wedges. Then you're going to take the one that's laid out on the right first, and you're just going to flip it over here, and you're going to line up the raw edges with right sides together. And for this one, you're going to start by lining up the tip of the diamond with the point of the triangle. Okay, so that's what you're going to line up, and you're going to sew a 1/4 inch right there. Once you do that, it's going to look like this. And for this first one, she has you press towards the diamond. So press towards the diamond so it looks like that. It feels a little awkward, but it makes everything work out nicely in the end, so just go ahead and do that. Then you're going to take your second wedge, and you're going to place it on the other side, flip it over so that the right side's together. Now for this one, instead of lining up the tip, you're going to just center it so that it hangs over kind of equally on both sides, and then go ahead and sew a 1/4 inch there. Now this is Deb Tucker, so everything is oversized. So if you don't have it perfectly centered, it's fine. These are nice and oversized, and our next step is going to be to trim them down. so it's okay. This is what it looks like before you trim it down. And now we're gonna take our Wedge Star ruler and we're gonna trim this unit down. So we're gonna go back to the cutting board. All right, so now we're going to trim our diamond wedges with our Wedge Star ruler. We are making 10-inch finished blocks, so the number that we're looking for here is the 10. So you can see at the point of the ruler, there's all these kind of diamonds here with numbers on them. The even numbers have solid lines and the odd numbers have dotted lines. So we're looking for that solid line by the 10 there. And I'm gonna set it on my piece. And those lines should sit in my seams here. So you can kind of see those lines there. I'm gonna line them up and put them right in my seams. And I'm gonna trim up one side and down the other. Now be careful when you do this trim. This is a place where your ruler can easily like shift. It's kind of an awkward trim. So you just wanna be really careful. And I do put Invisigrip on the back of all of my Deb Tucker rulers. So I'll have a link to that in the newsletter as well. But I trim up one side, down the other, and now I've got my nice, perfect little diamond wedge there. Okay, so once I get all those trimmed, then I'm ready to put the block together. Now that you have your diamonds made, we are ready to lay out the block and put it together. We're gonna start by laying out large wedges that you cut in step 1. So you've got your large wedges and the diamond wedges that we just made. We're gonna lay them out looking at the picture so that they're alternating large wedge, diamond wedge, large wedge, diamond wedge. Okay, you're gonna take first then and sew them into pairs that look like this. So when you go to sew them, if you always put a large wedge on top and then sew through with your 1/4 inch seam, they should all turn out right. So you're gonna just sew them into pairs, lining up the raw edges, and then you're gonna press those pairs towards the large wedge. So you'll start by sewing it into 4 pairs. When you get the pairs together, you do want to kind of square them up and trim off those dog ears there. You can use your Tucker trimmer or another ruler that has a diagonal line to kind of get it nice and squared, or you can just snip them off. But if you want to do it a little bit more accurate, check out Deb Tucker's directions for that. Once they're in pairs, then you're going to take the pairs and sew them into halves. So the halves will look like this. And now for pressing, you can either press that seam open, or I like to just keep the seams all going in the same direction. So they all go this way. I'm just gonna press that seam that way as well. That'll give me something to nest at the next step, which is my preference. Once you have the halves, then you'll sew the halves together into a full octagon that looks like this. And now your pressing options are either you can press that last seam open, or I like to sort of spin that seam. So I just continue the seams all going in the same direction. And in the center, you get that nice little flat kind of pinwheel. That'll be nice and flat when you go to quilt it. So now we've got our octagon. We've got one more step for trimming. So we're gonna stop here and we're just gonna trim the 4 corners that the triangles are gonna get added to. So you can see for the finished block, I'm gonna add my triangles to the diamond wedges. So I'm gonna pause here and I'm gonna trim, using my Wedge Star ruler, these 4 sides of the octagon. And then I'm going to add my triangles and there'll be one last trim at the end. So we'll stop here, we'll go back to the cutting board and I'll show you how to do that trim of the octagon and then the final trim of the block. Okay, we are almost done. So now we're gonna trim the 4 sides with the diamonds because that's where our triangles are gonna get added. To do that, we are going to use our Wedge Star ruler again, and we're looking for this dotted line here that says outside trim line. So you can kind of see that. That is going to sit on the dotted line there is going to sit in my seams of my diamond. So I set that right in there. And then I'm just going to trim across the top. And there's one. I'm going to repeat that for all 4 sides until I have all 4 of those diamond wedges trimmed. Once I've done that, then I can take and add my half square triangles from my medium fabric to those 4 corners. But it is important that you trim those first. So I'm going to add these over here. And they are oversized, plenty, but do just try to kind of center them. Put your right sides together. Here's the one I've actually trimmed already. So you'll line up the right sides together and just kind of center it as best you can. And then you'll sew your 1/4 inch seam there. So then, when you have that done, you are ready to trim the completed block. which looks like this. To do your final trim down, you're going to use your Tucker trimmer or any large ruler. And we are trimming this to 10.5 because these are 10-inch finished blocks. So if you use your Tucker trimmer, what you'll be looking for is the 10.5 diagonal and the main diagonal, and they will meet right in the center of that block, right there. But also I can make sure that the 10.5 is hitting each of those points and the main diagonal is hitting each of these points. Now I've already trimmed this one, I'm sorry, but there will be plenty to trim once you add those half square triangles. You will be trimming up this edge as well as the half square triangles, and you'll just kind of square that up, and that will complete your block. So now your block's finished and trimmed. Again, if you're doing the lap, you're gonna make 16 of those, and if you are doing the queen, you're going to make 25. That's all we're gonna do for finishing part 1. You will get your sashing, borders, and setting triangle fabric with finishing kit 2, which you'll get the last month of the Block Party block of the month. So hopefully this wasn't too confusing. You are welcome to call me or email me with questions, and we will have a Zoom meeting to follow up with this at the end of the week as well. All of that information is in the email, so look for it there. Thanks, guys.